YouTube? Welcome back to another History Teacher Reacts video with Mr. Terry as I continue my search for historical knowledge found here on the internet. Alright, today's little video comes from our awesome patrons over at Patreon who voted on this video this week, and it is Why Did Sparta Have Two Kings? And this is by History Matters. And this is a great story because you don't hear a lot of kingdoms, empires, whatever, that use a dual kingship, right? The obvious thing that would come to mind is that how could you balance that type of power? How could they come to share power? Would they try to, step on each other's toes and that sort of thing? And hopefully, yeah, this will clear it up. Now, in my kind of, as a history student, I was under the impression that as far as the functionality of how this system works was that one king would take care of the day-to-day operations of Sparta, okay, like a normal king would. But the other king was basically the king of the military, which basically served as like a whole position. The head of the military was like a king, and it would make sense because of Sparta's warlike culture of how much that would be like that. Plus, that king may need to be abroad a lot and not be able to do the day-to-day operations. So that was kind of the impression of the functionality. I know there's like different families, that like clans or whatever within the Spartan region, and that's how they kind of manage for them to coexist. But anyway, that's just the impression I was on, and I'm hoping to learn either more about that or maybe if what I just explained to you maybe is wrong. Right? And of course I'm open to that and would love to be proven wrong, or be able to change my opinion on that. So anyway, let's go ahead and get started here. Now, if you would like to vote in future polls, you can join Patreon. Down below is a link to the Patreon. The membership started $1 a month if you want to get involved, and the big perk for that is you get to vote on those videos. So link to the original video will be down in the description. Make sure you do that. If you haven't subbed to History Matters, they do a lot of these awesome little videos. Like this video is only about 3 minutes long, so you probably just blow through those. And that can be fun to do too. Have the short form versus the long form kind of thing. So that'll be there. Make sure to like and subscribe over to them. And if you haven't subbed to my channel, I'd love to have you around too. All right, with that, too much talk. And since we're going to be talking about kings, we better look the part. So let's go ahead and go with the crown today. All right, why did Sparta have two kings? Let's get learned.
Ancient Sparta is famous above all for its reputation as a military power. Its most famous king, Leonidas, led the fateful Battle of Thermopylae, but one thing that many people don't talk about is the fact that he wasn't the only king of Sparta. It had two kings from two different royal families who both held equal power.
Okay, so I'd heard this before, that yeah, the kingships were from different families. There were some powerful families, I believe, in Sparta, that region, and for them to work together, I think they had to kind of agree to that there would be two kings, and pretty amazing that could work. Now again, I want to know if the functionality was different. It was one more about the military versus one that was more to the day-to-day operations. And if that is true though, then how do you know which family is the one family always that what do you call that, like kingship, that lineage? Is that always like the military leadership side? So that's, again, now that I'm
the question is, why? How did Sparta come to have two kings, and what did they do? Well, the origins of the Spartan diarchy is debated and frankly not something with a definitive answer. The Spartans believed that both their royal dynasties, the Achaead and Eurypontid, came from when King Aristodemos had twins. Nobody knew which one was older, and so the Spartans decided that both should be king. What many historians believe is the most likely reason for Sparta having two kings is that when the city-state of Sparta was first founded, it was made up of the merger of smaller settlements. The rulers of the two largest settlements came to an agreement to have a dual monarchy which managed to persist just like in ancient Crete. Of course, asking why Sparta had two kings isn't limited to asking where they came from. It also includes asking why they kept this system for centuries.
Yeah, this is now what I'm interested in. Makes sense that you would have, again, these royal families, and they don't want to share power, and the only way to get them to work together under one unified kingdom is to divide up the, leadership, I guess, evenly. But yeah, why keep doing it? Why does this work?
To know why Sparta had two kings, you need to know how its political system worked. Sparta had what's called a mixed constitution. It had an elected chamber called the Apella, from which the Gerousia, or a council of 30 elders, was selected, which also included the two kings whose positions were hereditary. Yet despite there being kings, the most powerful people in Sparta were the ephors, who were 5 people elected from the entire population for a 1-year term.
Kind of interesting. You almost think of they're almost semi-democratic, where it's a mix of these different things. Okay. You might think that, oh, that was just an Athenian thing, but yeah, maybe more people were able to be involved in Athens, and that's more of a time for another, or a video for another time, because it's a lot more complicated than that.
And amongst the ephors there was often little disagreement, mostly because they all used their position to get rich and destroy people who didn't like them.
Yeah.
So what did Spartan kings actually do then? That depends on which kings you're looking at and when, since over time Spartan kings lost certain rights and privileges. And by the time of the Persian Wars they did two things above all else: they were religious leaders and they led the army. Whilst on campaign though, Spartan kings had near absolute authority, which is why Aristotle described them as being hereditary generals. At home though,
Maybe that's where, again, I was taught how they were kings. The king was a general. Like, that was what he did, because it's such a part of their life. Sparta, it's warfare is part of your life. Every male is military trained and all that stuff. Also, why they had such an enormous slave class. And at one time, I believe at their height, they had something like 10 slaves to every one Spartan citizen, which is just absurd to think of that, which fuels, it's kind of this thing like, why is Sparta so militarily driven? It feeds into itself, because think of this: if you have up to, at any time, okay, it could be 3-to-1 slaves to citizens, or 10-to-1, whatever, either way, the Spartans were always vastly outnumbered in their own kingdom by their own slaves, which means that you are constantly in a state of need to have military preparedness, because slave revolts, right? So you have to be constantly ready for that, which means your citizenship, your whole citizenry, needs to basically be a standing army at the same time. But the thing is, how do you get slaves? Slaves are usually obtained by captives of war. So if your military is really good, you're obviously going to win more battles. And the more battles you win, the more slaves you're going to get. And the more slaves you're going to get, the more you're going to need to be militarily successful. You see how this feeds in itself endlessly? And that basically is what was going on in Sparta for centuries.
Those Spartan kings could do little except for overseeing religious matters and voting in the Gerousia. So why would Sparta keep two kings then? Why not just have one, or even scrap the kings altogether? Well, the reason the king stayed was largely because of how politically weak they were. You see, the ephors were the only ones with real power, and if there was only one king, then that means that the opposition to them could coalesce around one man. With two, they only needed to keep one on side. And since the two dynasties were often rivals for glory and power, that wasn't too hard. It also prevented one of them from running the army and thus becoming too powerful. This is why the ephors made a promise to uphold the diarchy and would prevent one dynasty from removing the other. Had the Spartan kings had more power, then frankly the system would have collapsed earlier. And when the diarchy came to an end and was replaced by a monarchy in 210 BC, Sparta itself didn't last much longer, and in 192 BC it was conquered and forever removed as an independent state. I hope you enjoyed this episode, and thank you for watching, with thanks to my Patreon supporters whom you can see on screen now. And with an extra special thanks to James Bisonet, Ike, Danny Maloney, Colin Castleman, Marvin Cassow, Rob Waterhouse, Aaron the White,
MVPs.
Jordan Longley, Chris Wicker, Gustav Swan, Gareth Turner, Marcus Arsner, Maggie Paxkowski, David Silverman, Spinning Three Plates, Spencer Lightfoot, Lexi Schwinn, Winston Kaywood, Kelly Moneymaker, Anthony Beckett, The Original Cage, Robert Wetzel, Sky Chappelle, Parshu19, and Mo.
All right, so good stuff. So I guess what I took away as far as new stuff was the fact I didn't know fully what the power balance between the E4s, the council, because I know they were very much run by a council. Council of elders, if you will, but they had the kings, and didn't know. What I guess what I learned was I didn't know the E4s were. It seemed to be more powerful than I thought they were. I know they advised the kings, but I mean he's making a claim that almost like the kings are kind of powerless, and it would make sense that dual kingship ended up working because since they didn't have as much power. They didn't have probably as much motive to go after each other and their family lines, and really observe the E4s as really like the rulers. So a bit more sharing of power. But I mean, if that system really is lasting for 300 years, I mean, think about that. That's like the United States' history. It's pretty impressive when you think about that in like modern terms for that to work there. So pretty amazing, yeah, just to see that happen all the way until basically the Roman Empire is going to come through and take the region and all that stuff, and force deals upon them. So, okay, well, cool. It's good to mix it up and have just short little video. This video is 3 minutes, and 8 seconds. To be honest, sometimes it's more impressive if you see a video that's short that can pack in information than a long, drawn out one. You know what I mean? We see a lot of videos that are like that. So good to mix that up a little bit. Well, cool. Where actually was a really cool place to learn, actually where I did learn some other stuff too. Assassin's Creed Odyssey, not just the main game, but if you haven't tried I think it's called the Discovery mode. It's basically where you go to all these different places in the Greek world in Assassin's Creed Odyssey, and they basically give you lessons and teach you about all that stuff. And they have a ton of detail about the Spartan society and that dual kingship stuff. And so check that out for sure. I actually did some streaming of it. If you go through my History Teacher Plays playlist, you might find some of the Assassin's Creed Odyssey stuff where it might be titled like Discovery Mode, and there's like little fun quizzes and stuff like that. Pretty cool. And I should probably jump back into that. I did a lot of them, but that's something, by the way, if you're interested in learning more, that'd be kind of fun to do if you own that game, which you should own anyways, because it's an awesome game. All right, with that, you guys, I think we'll go ahead and wrap it up here. Thanks again to my patrons. Thank you so much. I don't tell you thanks enough. And I know maybe you think it's $1 a month, $5 a month, whatever you're donating. It means a lot. Thanks to anyone that's supporting in that way. If you did not know, we have a current Teespring, new Teespring campaign up. You might be able to see the new design below the video there. What we have currently as the time I'm airing this is a really cool Mario Kart themed World War II shirt. You can do t-shirts, there's long sleeves, hoodies, cell phone case, stuff like that. It's just really cool to have, and helps the channel out, and just promoting history. So anyways, check that out. There'll be a link down below regardless of if it's showing up in YouTube. In the description you'll see the Teespring link, so maybe check that out if you're looking for something, or a fun gift, Father's Day gift for yourself, whatever. And awesome. All right, with that, make sure you go down to the original link down below and give them your support. Thanks for being here, and we'll go ahead and end it here. Okay, we'll see you next time. Bye.